Thank you all for joining us for this film today. I've seen this a few times now, and I get goosebumps every time, and not just because it looks so cold. It just found it very moving. I'm April Melvin. I work here at the National Academies with our Polar Research Board. The Polar Board serves as the focal office within the organization for activities related to the cold regions. And so I'm really thrilled to be moderating this panel today. So we have Lonnie and Ellen joining us remotely. I'm going to give very brief bios. You can find longer bios on the event website. I don't think Lonnie really needs an introduction at this point, but I'll give him a very short one. So Lonnie is a distinguished university professor in the School of Earth Sciences and a senior research scientist in the Bird, Polar, and Climate Research Center at The Ohio State University. He holds many scientific honors for his achievements, as we've seen, and one of these is membership in the National Academy of Sciences, associated with our building here today. Members are elected to the National Academy of Sciences in recognition for their distinguished and continuing achievements in science. This is a widely accepted mark of excellence in science and is considered one of the highest honors that a scientist can receive. We also have Ellen Mosely-Thompson joining us remotely. Ellen is a distinguished university professor in the Department of Geography in the Atmospheric Science program and a senior research scientist also at the Bird, Polar, and Climate Research Center at The Ohio State University. She uses the chemical and physical properties preserved in cores collected from polar ice sheets and high mountain glaciers to reconstruct our Earth's climate history. She has led 9 expeditions to Antarctica and 6 to Greenland to receive cores, and she is also a member of the National Academy of Sciences. So a true powerhouse couple that we have with us. And on stage with me today, we have Regina Thompson. Regina is with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where she has been for almost 20 years. She currently serves as an assistant director. During her tenure, she's worked on counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and criminal investigations, and specializes in leading intelligence programs. She also serves as adjunct faculty at the National Intelligence University and Texas A&M's Bush School in Government and Public Service, where she teaches courses in leadership and domestic intelligence. We also have Alex Rivest, who is a Massachusetts Institute of Technology trained PhD in neuroscience. Alex grew up in an environment where curiosity and question asking were highly valued, and he's dedicated his life to helping teach others about the wonders of the world around us. He is the producer and co-director of Canary, which has premiered in over 160 screens across the US and featured in New York Times What to Watch, and was screened at the New York City Climate Week and the 28th UN Climate Change Conference, COP28, held last year. And finally, we have Danny O'Malley, who is a Grammy-nominated and James Beard-nominated film director and producer, best known for his work on Netflix's Chef's Table, where he serves as an executive director and producer. And Danny has made his mark in documentary television to work as a story producer, where his work was aired on Netflix, Fox Sports 1, and NBC. Danny and Alex won the Alfred Sloan Development Grant in 2017, which led to the creation of Canary, which is their first documentary feature together. So with that, we are going to have we do want to open this up for questions and discussion with the audience. So we have microphones down each of the aisles if anyone has a question for any of our panelists. While you may be thinking about that, I'll get us started with a question. As I was watching this film, I saw sort of two kind of parallel stories that came together so eloquently, that of a family and how our family kind of shapes who we are and who we become and what we choose to do in the world, and also a story of science and a professional trajectory and scientific inquiry. And I'm curious for all of you, kind of how you see these stories coming together, and what, especially I think from Alex and Danny, how, when you set out at the start of this film, did you envision that it was going to be one that was deeply about family in addition to deeply about science, or did that kind of emerge as you got to know the Thompsons and just see how tight-knit and important science or family was in this story?
Yeah, I can answer that. Normally when I approach a story, it's not me trying to impose something on it. It's the story trying to tell me what it's about. So I listened to the interview, I listened to what happened throughout their life, and really all that is credited to the Thompson family. And starting with, I think, Lonnie's mom, who really planted a seed that created this family tree of ambition and accomplishment, and the way they hold each other together so that they can do hard things. And I think um, that persistence is something that is at the heart of the science story too, and what we need to do as a planet to face climate change. So to me, we just listened and the Thompsons spoke on that.
And I think it's important to say hi, Lonnie. Hi, Ellen. It's wonderful to see you.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Danny.
And thank you to everyone who's come out to see this film, and to the National Academy of Sciences for hosting this screening in the DC Environmental Film Festival. It's really an honor to be here. I think one of the things too, when you talk about, I wanted to teach science and help people understand what the journey of a science is, what the journey of scientists is. And if you want to teach science facts, there's a whole line of educational psychology that says if you want to teach science, you could take a group of kids, you teach them facts, you teach another group of kids, you teach them facts, but the struggles scientists went through to get those facts, the kids who are exposed to the struggles that scientists went through learn the facts better. They're more engaged. And so having Lonnie and Ellen and Regina open up their lives and talk about struggles, right, allows us to see and feel and understand the facts of what's happening. And so it is just best practices for science storytelling. And it's just an honor to have been given such access to such an incredible family. And without Regina, her voice in this film, she was a late edition interview that we picked up. And without her, I don't know what this film would be, because she is such an important part of this film. And it's so awesome to be up here with you. So I just wanted to say that.
Lonnie or Ellen, do you have anything about the family dynamics in the film that you'd like to comment on?
Well, I think they were very well represented. It certainly hasn't been an easy life. As Regina said, she had to live with having one parent gone a lot of the time. When I was in Antarctica and Greenland, Lonnie would be at home taking care of Regina along with his mother. And when Lonnie was gone, I would be at home taking care of Regina with my mother. So in reality, what the result was a very tight-knit family, not just with the first generation, but with the second generation as well, or the prior generation, I should say. I also like to say that Danny and Alex and their team were very easy to work with. When Lonnie got the first call from, I don't know if it was Alex or Danny who called. I think it was Alex, but yep, it was Alex. And after the conversation, Lonnie recounted it to me. He said, well, what do you think? And because they were talking about doing this story. And I said, well, I think we need to think about it a little bit more. And it took a while. And because you like to check out everybody these days. And the more we learned, the more eager we were to work with them. And it's just been a delightful experience.
Thank you. The microphones are still open if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. Oh, we have a question here.
Can you hear me? Awesome. So this is a question that I have not asked beforehand, and it is about the archival footage. How did you find it all, and were there any surprises in the mix?
So Lonnie and Ellen, over the 40, 50 years of expedition, have recorded every single, pretty much every day of their journeys. And so we were given access to look through their archival material. They did not want it to leave the center where they store it for rightful reasons, because it is priceless information. So we hired a van to go park outside of Ohio State University. The gentleman was allowed to go pick one tape at a time, bring it out, digitize it, bring it back, get the next one, bring it back. That process took weeks. And then from our edit team, we went through everything. And there's always gems. We could tell a whole kind of comedy story of behind the camera stuff. I think you're all thankful we left that out. But there's some of the footage from back in the 70s that just really helps paint a picture of what it was like to travel there.
I would also say, Alex, in the process, for every expedition, we were like, who else had a camera there? And then he'd find another set of photos, another photographer. And I think we had over 20,000 photos that we were picking from, and Lord knows how many hours of video. And that opening scene in New Guinea, we didn't have any footage of that for the bulk of our post-production, and Alex persisted and eventually cracked how to find it. And yeah, every part of making a movie is a journey.
Next question.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi Silvestre. I'm a 35-year-old French glaciologist. And I must say that the careers of both Ellen and Lonnie deeply, deeply inspired me to become a glaciologist. I know there are a couple of glaciologists in the room today, and I would like to ask Ellen and Lonnie, would you have any words of encouragement to us who have grown up to become glaciologists at a time when glaciers are disappearing around the world? Thank you.
Well, I would say that one of the things, and I tell my new PhD students, is that you wouldn't want to make your career studying low latitude glaciers, because unfortunately we're going to lose those. However, there are many places, Greenland and Antarctica, that have really good archives, and we'll have them for a while. I would say that as I've gone through my career, I've become more and more concerned about the loss of those glaciers and how they affect the indigenous people and the people downstream that depend on water from them. So the loss of those glaciers and being able somehow to have a prediction that they could work on finding ways to adapt to the loss of that water supply, to me is very important and very complex, because every country is different, their cultures are different, and and I think I would like to see what we do actually really help people, and that's I think that, yeah, you do your science, and that's very important, but always keep in mind how can I take what I'm doing and actually make a difference in people's lives, because ultimately that's what it counts.
I'd like to add to that. One of the things about glaciology is that, well, you can do the physical aspects of the glaciers, you can do the chemical aspects. Glaciers are just a phenomenal resource, and have been since the 60s, with the work that was done in Greenland and Antarctica by some of the, the lead scientists, the people who we followed somewhat in their footsteps, except I stayed in the polar regions and Lonnie went more to the tropics. But glaciers record everything that falls out on them. And if that is preserved, then there are a tremendous number of archives that can be tapped. And I frankly think that maybe particularly more for the polar regions than the tropical glaciers, for the reasons that Lonnie mentioned, still are a treasure trove of information. And if you are fascinated by ice and climate, I think there's a break for someone who's 35. You have a number of decades ahead of you for there'll be the development of new equipment. There'll be new thoughts. Like we're working on microbes now. 15 years ago, we didn't even think about that. And your future will be, what are the new things that we can now extract and measure? And I think one of the things I'd like to just say that excites me and I feel very strongly about is how many young women are now going into the field in glaciology from a scientific point of view and going into the field leading their teams, writing the proposals, organizing the expeditions, and leading them. Women have had a very strong impact in the last 10 to 15 years, and I'd like to see that continue. So for those young people in the audience, both male and female, if you're excited about it, then you should follow your passion, because there will be science and important science for you to do in the future.
I would like to add that I think that glaciology, when I was starting, was more a boutique subject. There weren't so many. There were very few places that had a glaciologist. Very few departments had a glaciologist. And right now, you know, ice is a big unknown. How rapidly it's going to melt and contribute to sea level rise. I think these are basic questions that impact people around the world. So it's a very important area to study. And the more you can take what you do and relate it to people and how they might adapt to these changes, I think that's what ultimately science is about. It's about changing our trajectory. And how do we go about that?
Thank you. All right, we'll take one from the side of the room.
Hey, my name's Mandar Jadhav. I'm a psychiatrist and a lobbyist. So my question is, how do you persuade people, enough people, if they have a falsely held belief, say denial of climate change, how do you persuade them to change their mind?
That's a massive challenge, of course. But if those of us working in climate science were to all work together in what I would call our neighborhoods, whether that's our academic neighborhood, the neighborhood where we maybe go to church, where we volunteer, as well as our scientific neighborhoods, if we all worked to essentially integrate ourselves, become familiar with those who have doubts about climate change. It's amazing when you sit down with people in their neighborhood, their comfort zone, and you start talking about climate change, and you start with things that you have in common. Here in Ohio, we're both a manufacturing and an agricultural state. And a lot of our farmers, believe it or not, do not think that human-produced climate change is real. But you can sit down, maybe over a cup of coffee, and start asking questions like, well, are you the third generation farmer here? Well, what did your father or grandfather see on their farm? What's it look like now? Have you seen changes? Are you having to change the timing of your planting? Are you using different fertilizers? Just get them talking so that you have some common interests and some common language. And then you find that they're very curious. Most people are curious. I know there's some that aren't, and they believe whatever they're told, but a lot of people really do want to know more and give people the opportunity, but do it in their neighborhood, wherever that might be, and in a common language. They don't want to hear about, Newton's laws of physics, or what they want to hear is about experiences and using terms that they are comfortable with. And we hope Canary goes a long way to helping people engage in more dialogue.
I was gonna say make a movie. But I do have family members who didn't believe in climate change, and when they saw the film, they changed. And I would also say you're the lobbyist. I think the actual statistics on how many people outright deny climate change show that that number's a lot lower than the actual political divide amongst the parties. So I would also ask the lobbyists how we flip some of those other votes.
I think we have to go with the young people. Before the pandemic, there were demonstrations in capitals around the world about the lack of action of their governments to do something about climate change. Those young people are enthusiastic. They're looking for a direction. And one of our hopes with this film was to inspire the next generation of young people and to make the point that we can all make a difference. And if we all make a difference, we change the world. And I've testified before the U.S. Senate. I believe, and I thought in the beginning that this change is going to come from the top down, and it looked very positive, but that's not going to happen. It's going to come from the bottom up. And I think that these climate deniers I just don't know how that works, but one of the reasons I like glaciers is that they have no political agenda. There's no lobbyists. There's no special interest groups. They just sum up what's going on in their environment. And unfortunately, they're all speaking in one voice, that our planet is getting warmer. And it's getting to where it's actually dangerous because of how rapidly we're losing ice on land and the rise in sea level. And you can think of all those implications. But for people who deny, I think you're better off spending your energy to push the next generation because they're going to be the voters. And they're the ones that are going to change and have to deal with, unfortunately, a lot of the problems caused by our generation. So I've thought about this a lot, and sometimes to get that communication going, you need people who are coming from, I would say, the same tribe. And for example, in West Virginia, Ellen and I have more impact because we're from there. I actually came to Ohio State to study coal geology, and I don't have anything against the industry, but we have to do something about the carbon problem that our whole planet faces. But it's kind of finding that common territory where you can speak and on the basic, and there's a lot of things you agree on, and then you get the important thing is to get communication going, and if you can do that, And, but I absolutely feel that those deniers, that change has to come from within them. And we were hoping that in some cases, Canary would show them a different view, and they would come to this realization that this climate change, this global warming is real, and it's impacting people today, and it's going to get worse because we have done literally nothing to change that curve that we're on. And yeah, it's going to take all of us working together and every nation working together. But I can say from my experience, we have fewer deniers today than we did when we started. And I don't get nasty emails anymore, and I don't get this this pushback, because it's so obvious if you open your eyes and you see the Canadian forest burning, and there's no record of that ever happening, that the world is changing, and it's changing very rapidly. And I just fear that we have to run to catch up if we're really going to change the trajectory that the climate is on.
Thank you, Lonnie.
I think one thing too about denial that and maybe Regina, you can talk about this a little bit too. One of the things, Lonnie, I like about telling your story and that you were so open about was, you know, you were the world expert telling the world, listen to the facts. This is what I see. You know, why aren't you listening to the facts? And then your doctor tells you you have heart failure and you need a heart transplant, right? And I think with the beauty of that, though, it shows us how susceptible we all are to denial. And all of us who quote unquote believe in climate change, we are all at some level, we have denial based on our behavior and how we're going about it. And that is something we all need to come to terms with. It's not just about believing or not believing. It is about understanding what our hypocrisies are, if we're really addressing things. You know, I am very adamant that we need to change the future. I also flew here on a plane, right? And these are things I need to come to terms with, and we need to talk about openly what our blind spots are, because denial has a very sinister way, and it can sneak up on us and make us do things that we are not necessarily healthy for us. And I think, you know, you in the film talk about seeing your dad kind of going on these missions still. And what did that, seeing that and kind of thinking about it in the lens of denial, how did that change your perception of denial?
Well, it's kind of what we've been talking about. Yes, we talked about it in the film. I talked about watching him struggle to breathe, just walking through the airport thinking, how are you going to survive this trip going up on, you know, these glaciers? And so I saw it, but also you couldn't tell him that because he wasn't there yet. So everybody has their own timeline in terms of exposure to information and data. He had to be exposed to how he felt more. He had to be exposed to the opinions of more doctors. He had to be exposed to that data and that information. And then eventually he believed it and took care of the issue. And based on what Dad just said, I really hope that that is true. That's a great data point I hadn't heard before, that he's not getting as much hate mail.
Yes.
I'm actually really glad too that the death threats have died down. We had a few of those. So that's really good, and that's a really good point of people not reaching out, because in anything, one of the first reactions we have when we have denial is we lash out. So I saw those emails, but those people lashing out. It's not to quote the movie title, but truth is inconvenient. A lot of times, and as was talked about in the film, change is scary. Nobody likes change. Managing change is one of the hardest things that we do, whether it's in an organization, whether it's in a field of science, whether it's in a family, whatever it is, change is so hard. And so I was really glad that Dad was open about that part of his life and having to come to terms with the hard issue, because as the family watching it, we watched him in denial. We watched him from the stages of denial to the collecting of evidence, more data, acceptance, solution. And so I'm really grateful that we did get to the solution.
We hope that's what happens with the climate story. Lots of data collected, and we find the solution, which will make the world a better place for all of us.
Thank you. All right, let's take another question here.
Well, I'm a little bit at a loss for words because, of course, you've talked all about what I was going to ask. But I do want you to know, as a climate activist, that we are very busy and that everybody in this room should be very busy. And I wanted to ask you if anything had come from the film. Do you think you have changed the hearts and minds of people? Have you gotten any proof that, in fact, you're not preaching to the choir? The other thing that I want to know, the second part of this made-up question, is the Union of Concerned Scientists. I wanted to know whether or not you thought that that was an organization that was telling the story the way you wanted it to be told, and I'll just sit and wait for my answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
will fight on.
Thank you for doing the hard work.
Yeah.
I would say I've seen a lot of different ways this film has affected people within my family, like I said, who didn't believe in climate change. There's also surprises I didn't even know about. Someone I talked to who saw the film said, "Oh, I thought we solved that climate change thing when Al Gore made the movie." So there's some fights we don't even know we have to win. And then there's even ways that you don't even see coming. So one of the screenings we had in Los Angeles, a friend of mine from high school came out, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And he left the film thinking, if I were to save an ice core, what would it be? And he ended up coming up with this idea of using AI models to preserve languages. And he applied for a grant and got a $100,000 grant to preserve the Navajo language in an AI model. So I think the big thing when you put a film out is you don't know what impact's going to have. You don't know, maybe no one believes in climate change any differently, but we launch a few scientific careers or scientific dreams, or, you know, one person told us they saw the film and it made them believe in dreams again. And whether that addresses climate change, I don't know, but it's certainly worth making a film for.
I think the biggest response I've seen is people believing in themselves. And there was a ticket taker for Canary from last year who reached out to me 2 days ago and said he's saw the movie, asked himself what he was doing, and now he's an EMT. He wanted to do something to affect the future, and that was the way he knew how to do it. And I think if we all can believe in ourselves and believe in our purpose and care about what the future is, that's the start, and that the good stuff will come from that.
All right, let's take a question over here.
Valentine Cass, a retired program officer from the National Science Foundation. And I want to congratulate and thank Lonnie, Ellen, and the whole team for this terrific film. And my question is, how do you see distributing it so that the millions of people will actually get to watch this film?
Thank you very much. And I hope you recognize that the last line of the film, the optimism that Lonnie says, is a line from the NSF. So it is such an important institution that, allows us as humans to express our curiosity. And I don't think the NSF gets enough credit for what the NSF does. And hopefully this film can help look at it that way. In terms of distribution, everywhere we take it, people love it. And the hardest thing in this industry is getting distribution. So you can get it right now buy it on Amazon and Apple TV and all these places. It did a theatrical run, but tell your friends, tell your family. And this is, like we said, like Lonnie said, it's a bottom up thing. and we are fighting for something that we believe in. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this movie and also in general for your work in the field and in the lab. The movie was very moving, at least for me, not just as a habitant of planet Earth, but scientifically speaking, in terms of personal history of science. So since we already talked sufficiently, I think, about denial, change, and the difficulty of change, etc., I had a small request, if it's possible. Could you give us like short abstract, a short elevator pitch about what you just mentioned that you do in archaeo microbiologist, paleo microbiologist on the course? This is super interesting. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna just like do it some look up afterwards. But if you could give us like a primer, that would be super nice. Thank you.
I would say that probably one of the things we've learned over our career is that there's always new technology that allows you to look at things that were not possible 10 or 20 years ago. And to me, this is why having an archive of those cores and preserving that for the future is so important. And Ellen mentioned the bacteria and the virus story. It took some time to come up with the protocol to be able to make these type of measurements in such a low biomass medium. But we have succeeded in doing that. And we had our first paper in microbiome in 2021. And it probably had more citations and more uptakes from media because it was dealing with viruses and an ice core that we had drilled in Western Kunlun's and far Western China. And so it had a huge impact. The fact that you can identify them, you can look at how they vary with climate. This is a very important story for the future because, how did they behave in past warm periods? How have they evolved? And ice preserves anything that's in the air, gets frozen in time, and you have a timeline, so you can go back over 30, 40, 100,000 years and develop that history. So that would not have been possible. And we have to collaborate, and I think the breakthroughs will come on this collaboration across disciplines, like with the microbiology department, the professors at Ohio State, and we have a very good collaboration, and it takes both, because you got to understand the climate and these microbes. And so bringing those two diverse disciplines together, I think is going to yield a tremendous amount of data going forward. But some of the ice cores in our freezer at Ohio State come from glaciers that no longer exist. So they are the only ice cores from that part of the world, and they will only be those cores for the future. And so I can only imagine with the technology advancement 20 years from now, what we may be able to extract from that frozen archive.
Thank you. All right, I'm getting the warning that we're running short on time, but we have two folks that are still waiting. So hopefully we can kind of keep the questions and the answers brief.
Thank you. My name is Judea Lawton. I just want to give my commendations to Lonnie. You've had a remarkable life and you're a remarkable human being. I was wondering, do you know what country is at the forefront, in your opinion, of climate change right now?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we're all kind of behind the eight ball on this subject. There is so much that needs to be done, but I would say that Europe, Germany, there have made good advances. And I do a lot of work in China. They produce more solar panels than any country on earth. And we're going to electric vehicles. In some ways, they can get it done because they just say so. In a democracy, it's a bit more challenging, but the fact is technology is better and it's better for our cities. But I think that all countries that are working on this at some level, and I would say that I really like the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden has passed. It's the biggest step forward in doing something about climate change than we've had in this country, certainly since we've been making the argument that we have to do something. So we're going in the right direction. I just hope we get there faster.
Great, thank you. And our last question.
My name is Vinny Setia. As a retired surgeon, I was intensely moved by Lonnie's drive to go back to the glaciers after a very successful transplant. I wish you a very, very long life. Want to thank the contributions of the whole family, the filmmakers. We're all so moved and educated, and I'm sure it is going to have a great impact on people who see this film. And I think it will be a change maker for a lot of people. And as a surgeon also, if I could strive for a glacier, like a physical glacier transplant for our ailing planet, I know that still won't work. We still have to do the work because the new transplant will fail unless we do what we have to do.
All right.
I'm very honored and been impressed with the advancement in the medical field, in surgery, and what we are capable of doing. I mean, it's amazing that you can do all of these things on another heart. And, we can do these things. So I know humans are capable of dealing with the climate issue. And, but we need everybody doing what they do. That's, but at the same time, thinking about what they can do to reduce their carbon emissions, and we can change the future.
All right. Before we close out, I just wanted to ask all our panelists if there's any other messages that you wanted to leave the audience with that we haven't touched on yet in the discussion.
I'll touch on one because it actually goes to what the surgeon was talking about, and another thing that we learned through this process as a family, and that is the strength of the human spirit. And one thing that the surgeon shared with us, and not just the surgeons, but also the doctors in the heart hospital shared with us, is that a lot of times they can tell which patients will make it and which ones will struggle based on their power of positivity, based on just the health of their spirit in general. And I think that was something that we really learned through this, because that isn't just with heart transplants, that's in everything that we do. So even though this can be a difficult conversation with climate change, it's also important to share the positivity that can go with it, how it can bring people together, the collaboration, get excited about what the future can bring, because that makes us all healthier. And that's just something that we learned through the transplant process. And those dreams of going back to Kilkaya and being on the mountains is what drove my dad. And he overcame odds that literally we had to listen to the surgeon tell us that they have no medical explanation about why he is still alive. So if there is no medical explanation, then I guess it is the something internal. It's a spirit, it's a drive, but it was getting back on that mountain is what drove him. But what I like about the movie is it gives the opportunity for everybody to reflect on what drives me like that. And as the examples with AI and things like that, the impact of the movie isn't going to be just for climate change. It's going to be other people thinking about, what really excites me? What would I be willing to risk my life for? And what excites me to the point that I'm going to do things that have never been done before. So that's just something that came out in the movie, is just the power of the person.
I'm gonna yes and that, because I think making this film was very much a lesson into doing things that have never been done before. And Lonnie kind of gave us a master class that we followed, because a lot of people said, well, why, you have this successful show, why don't you go do something about an athlete or a cool band, and why scientists? And, I believe scientists had amazing stories to tell, and I pursued it. And there were a lot of times that it was really hard. There were a lot of times that I felt like it would never happen. But the thing that guided us the whole time was we had this larger dream that, one day we'd be in a big theater full of people and showing scientists on the big screen in the way they deserve to be shown, as people who push forward our society. And like a huge part of it is just you face the unknown in life. And sometimes there's no data on what's out there or what's next. And with climate change, it's the same thing. And all you can really do is believe that you're going to find a way through it. And that belief is at the center of this film. It's at the center of Lonnie and Ellen's work. And it's how you get stuff done in the world. And it's how we're going to solve climate change.
I'm going to yes and that. We set off to make a science film, and at the end, you see it is a film about belief, right? As Regina so nicely says, Lonnie has faced the impossible things, and what he did was discover the recipe for how to make it possible. And that is to bring together an international collaboration of people who share a dream. And knowing that people can come together to do those things, that's the belief that we all need to start with. And I think, if there's one thing you can take away, is just first you got to believe in the dream, and we can all make it happen together.